Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to finish the initial cleanup on the backplate for the lock mechanism. Here's a look at the backplate as it stands right now. The top half is basically how I left it in the last video, and the bottom half is where I'm trying to get to today. I want to combine all of the different textures that I have at the top, the repairs around the holes and the original smooth finish from the plate. And I'm trying to get that into something that looks like this. It's just a consistent scratch pattern that's horizontal, and everything is basically the same. Once I have a consistent surface over the entire plate, I'm going to be able to start refining that surface and smoothing it out and making it, a lot more pleasing to look at. I'm not trying to get to a mirror finish, although I probably could if I wanted to, put in that amount of work. All I'm really after is to have a nice, what would be called today a brushed finish, just a matte finish that's has some texture to it, but nothing is overwhelming, so it just kind of disappears behind the mechanism. I left a couple of holes on the corner of this plate to show you a different method of repairing the holes when the scarring isn't too severe. As I've been experimenting with repairing these holes, I've been finding that quite often it isn't necessary to start off by chiseling away material the way I did in the last video. Most of them can just as easily be repaired using scrapers alone, so that's what I'm going to be showing you here. The majority of the work is going to be done with the flat scraper that I used in the last video. I've refined the shape a little bit, but it's essentially the same scraper. It still has the blunt 90-degree face on the front of it. And in addition to that, I'm going to be using a curved scraper that looks kind of like a paring knife. It has a flat bottom and the edges come together at roughly a 90-degree angle. And this one gets scraped from side to side, not along its length the way the other scraper is used. So this allows me to get into some pretty tight areas, and I can use it on most of the plate, but you'll see later that there are a couple of scrapers that I'm going to need to build to fit into areas that this scraper won't reach. And these scrapers are very rough. I mean, I've been doing a lot of experimenting with different shapes and bevel angles and that sort of thing, so I've been pretty much going right from the grinder right to work to see how they cut. Because I haven't been taking the time to hone the edges on these tools, the surface left behind is a lot rougher than it needs to be. But again, that's part of the experimentation that I'm working with, and a rough texture is quite often something that you have to deal with. So I want to be able to see whether I can bring this surface back or not. So far I've been using the scraper the way I always have been, by just pushing it along, and that works well if you're working on a relatively smooth surface. But in this area I have a sharp, jagged edge left by the chisel cut that caused the damage when I removed the rivet head. So I've switched over to a slightly different technique. I'm applying a little bit more downward pressure, and I'm rocking the scraper from side to side. This is causing it to walk very slowly across that edge, and it's taking care of all the high edges. And once I get down to a surface that's reasonably flat, I can go back to just scraping the normal way, which is a lot faster. So I'm going to continue this process until I get most of the major damage repaired around these two holes. I don't mind if I leave a little pocket or a little divot. I just don't want a long gash that's going to jump out in the final surface finish. Once I'm satisfied that I've got that down and I have a relatively smooth area around these holes, I'm going to switch over to the curved scraper and start putting the surface finish on the plate. This entire clip is real time. I slowed it down a little bit when I was showing you that wiggling technique when I was trying to repair that damage, but this whole section where I'm showing you how to repair this hole is real time. So for those of you who are always asking me questions about how long this process actually takes, this will kind of give you an idea. Here you can see the kind of shavings that I've been pulling up with this scraper, you know, even as crude as it is. They were kind of scattered around the plate. I've pulled them all together here so you can have a better look. You can also see that there's this tiny little imperfection that I wasn't able to get out. There's a little dark line right next to the hole. That goes really deep, and I'm not going to bother gouging my way all the way to the bottom of this. When I have the whole surface texture applied, I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. Now that I've repaired that hole, I'm just going to be using this curved scraper to put the consistent scratch pattern over the entire plate. I'm fast forwarding through here because there's not a lot to understand about this process, so it's just time, and you can sort of see how this little scraper is getting into all the little nooks and crannies that would be impossible to get to any other way. So here's the plate as it stands now. You can see that I'm going to need to build some specialized scrapers to get into some of these areas because I wasn't able to follow the horizontal scratch pattern that I wanted to put in here. So that's going to take a little bit of work, but basically the entire plate right now is at the same level, even though it still looks pretty terrible. Here I've pulled right in so you can get a really good look at the surface that I'm applying right now. I'm not sure what the magnification is, but it's far beyond anything you could see with the naked eye. As I scan over to the right, you're going to see that this scratch pattern is going to change. It's going to become more refined, and that's simply using the same tools with a honed edge. There's still a lot of deep gouges and scratches in this test patch, but because I've gone over the surface with a curved scraper, all of the sharp edges that would really highlight those scratches have been rounded out. So what I'm left with is a series of basically rolling hills, and to the naked eye it does appear flat. Here I've pulled the camera back a little bit so you can see what size of an area I'm working with. Those holes at the bottom of the plate are 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So if you look at that patch on the right at a normal distance, it'll just have a nice smooth satin finish. I'm not going to be filming any of that because it's just basically more of the same process, and I'm just going to be working at it here and there as I'm working on other areas of the box. But I just wanted to give you an idea of where I was headed with all this, and I've always wanted to experiment with putting on a surface finish on a piece using tools that I've made myself, so this was an opportunity to try that. So I hope you found this little side trip interesting, and in the next video we'll get back to putting the box back together. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact me by using the email address that I have shown here. If you like the channel and the work that I'm doing, please consider becoming a patron. Every dollar you contribute will bring me one step closer to being able to produce videos full-time.